Good morning, everyone. I'm on call today covering acute strokes from home via telemedicine, and it hasn't been too busy, so I figured today is a good day to upload a video reviewing the book by Conor Devine, Attitude is Everything, published in 2013. For those who don't know who Conor Devine is, he has multiple sclerosis, and by profession, he's an expert in property management and debt management and owns a consulting company, but he has an online social media presence where he talks about multiple sclerosis, plant-based diet, nutrition, and sort of inspirational ideas around multiple sclerosis and resilience. And he's actually completed 7 Ironman competitions. And if you don't know what an Ironman is, it's a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a marathon all in one event. So to complete 7 of those is certainly an accomplishment. And he has some sort of anti-establishment ideas, and he believes in nutrition and lifestyle to treat multiple sclerosis. And he's challenged me on some issues in Twitter, but it's all in good fun. And I think we both have an interest in sort of nutrition and multiple sclerosis and psychological resilience. And this book, Attitude in Everything, is sort of a memoir describing his experiences with MS, and also has a little bit of a self-help component, where he talks about his advice to people with MS or his advice to people facing other adversities. And I thought it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. He gives some good advice, and it's really interesting to read his story. So just to give you a little bit of a summary, Conor, had 2 younger brothers, and he grew up with a very supportive mother who was always encouraging him and taught him to have a positive attitude and never give up. He notes that when he was 5 years old, he had a very severe case of glandular fever, known as mononucleosis in the United States, which is actually associated with MS. And he was so sick, he missed almost an entire year of school. And that's quite unusual. Usually, Epstein-Barr virus in children does not cause significant symptoms. So it's very unusual to get very ill from it, but it can occur. He was quite athletic in his youth. He played soccer, he competed in 3 Milk Cup tournaments, and he won an All-Ireland medal representing the University of Ulster in Gaelic football. And he actually married his childhood sweetheart, Kate Lowry. He was married in 2006. So it seemed like he had the perfect life. He was successful working for a consulting firm. He was married to his childhood sweetheart. But on his honeymoon, he started developing symptoms of multiple sclerosis. And he had numbness in his right arm and hand and shoulder, and neuropathic pain that spread to his chest and his legs, and he had balance difficulties, and he just felt generally bad. And retrospectively, he had what is known as layer meets phenomenon, which is essentially having abnormal sensations or electric shock sensations when flexing the neck. And it's associated with abnormalities in the cervical spine, particularly demyelinating disease, but also with some other causes such as herniated discs. So currently he would be in his early 40s by my calculations, but at the time that he had these symptoms, he was only 28 years old. And he saw different doctors, and he was just reassured over and over again, nothing is wrong. He actually had an MRI of his brain, which was negative. And it's actually quite unusual for the MRI of the brain to be negative initially in multiple sclerosis. Usually it's abnormal and shows demyelinating lesions even at the time of the first symptoms. Although in his case, the lesion showed up later on a subsequent MRI. But he was initially reassured, and then he saw a neurologist who actually diagnosed him with transverse myelitis, or cervical myelitis in his case. And it doesn't seem that he had an MRI of his cervical spine to confirm that, which is a little bit strange. And it doesn't seem like he was given steroids or anything to help his recovery from the attack. And so he had symptoms for a year or more and was just miserable. And the doctors were telling him that he was advised to take time off from work and rest and not exercise. And so he was out of shape and depressed and even suicidal at one point. And he was trying some alternative treatments like acupuncture and a faith healer. And eventually he had the subsequent MRI and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And his neurologist gave him Rebif as a disease-modifying therapy. But he didn't tolerate it well, so he was changed to Copaxone 20 milligrams daily, which he took for about 5.5 years up to the time this book was published. Now, it's interesting, since that time, I think Conor's ideas have changed, and he's now really more into nutrition and sort of against disease-modifying therapy. But at the time, he kind of believed in disease-modifying therapy. Now, he did write a second book published more recently, which I have not read, so I don't know exactly what ideas he espouses in that book. So in his depression, he started looking into self-help and personal development. And he was inspired by a motivational speaker named Bert Jukes. He was inspired by Montel Williams, the American talk show host, and by Lance Armstrong's book. And he was also inspired by a friend named Trevor, who had a spinal cord injury riding a motorcycle and became paraplegic, but was still very high functioning and working. And so he became an avid reader and was just trying to work on personal development and trying to improve himself. Right around this time in 2010 was after the global financial crisis, and his job sort of became less secure, and so he quit his job working for a consultancy firm and started his own business, which was successful. And he stayed with his wife, and his wife gave birth to a daughter, Liliana, and later in 2010. And he developed some ideas around self-help. So just to give you a few examples, he believes in the idea of 100% responsibility, sort of taking responsibility for your actions. And he actually uses this exact term, 100% responsibility. And if you're familiar with my book, Resilience in the Face of Multiple Sclerosis, I interviewed Ho'oponopono expert Mabel Katz, and she uses this exact term, although I don't think that he got it from her. And he gives 3 golden rules. Make a decision, be decisive, take action, start pursuing your goals. And you have to believe, you have to have 100% belief that your actions will be effective and that you can get better and you can improve yourself. Sort of some ideas similar to what is known as the secret. And so he started to turn his life around. He got back to exercising, and he actually accepted a challenge to enter the Belfast Marathon. And he actually raised 10,000 pounds for a MS charity called Action MS. And he was actually successful in completing that marathon. And he talks about a few other things like MS being an invisible illness, and he gives a lot of other advice. One quote that he gives, it relates to the concept of post-traumatic growth by the researchers Tedeschi and Calhoun, such that after a challenge, after an adversity, you may actually end up being better off than you were before. So instead of post-traumatic stress, there is actually the possibility of post-traumatic growth. And of course, he had both of those things. So this quote that he writes is, "My MS diagnosis has defined me as the person I always wanted to be. It has helped me to understand who I actually am and has helped me to get where I've wanted to be." So I thought that was a great quote. Now, he gives specific advice to people with MS. He does recommend disease-modifying therapy, and as I said, he was on Copaxone for 5.5 years and was stable throughout that entire time and was actually dramatically improved. Although I think that he would now retract that idea. He advocates a plant-based diet, and he notes that even as a young child, he was already eating fairly healthy. He recommends fruits, vegetables, organic whole fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, and animal products that are organic and in smaller quantities and low in saturated fats, and he advises eliminating trans fats and trying to get more omega-3 fatty acids such as flax and chia seeds, although he advises against a very strict diet and feelings of guilt around unhealthy foods and recommends looking for sort of alternatives to unhealthy foods that you enjoy. Now, I'm not sure how he currently feels about diet. He may be a strict vegan at this point. I'm not really sure. He also advises stress management and supplementation with vitamin D and possibly omega-3 supplements, and of course, intense exercise. And if you want a little bit more information about his story, you can go to his website, www.conordevine.com. Now, one critique I would have about the book is that some of his ideas could be taken the wrong way. For instance, he says, if you have the right attitude, you can achieve anything you want. If you have the right attitude towards your illness, I know and believe it is possible to reverse your symptoms and win the battle. Now, I understand that this is sort of a psychological idea of 100% responsibility, sort of the same thing that they say in the book, The Secret, although I think it puts a little bit too much blame on people with the disease. Certainly not 100% of people can reverse 100% of the symptoms, even if they have the right attitude, even if they make the right decisions. So I think he's a little bit too strict there, but I understand what he was going for. But anyways, I really did enjoy the memoir component of it, and I think he gives some good and practical advice. I think he's an amazing guy. Just to kind of read off some of his achievements, in his first marathon, the Belfast Marathon, which is a very hilly marathon during which he stopped for an interview because the media was following him, he ran 4 hours and 34 minutes. By comparison, my first marathon, I ran only 5 hours and 11 minutes, and I definitely didn't stop for an interview. And he also later ran the New York City Marathon, and he ran 3 hours and 59 minutes. And this was actually the alternative marathon to Hurricane Sandy, and he's run several other races, including 7 Ironman competitions. I don't have his times, but he did run the Ironman, the half Ironman in Dublin 2017 in 6 hours and 27 minutes. And I don't exactly know how good that is, but I think it's good, but not an elite time. Anyways, if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, please post in the comments below.